What's up everybody, hello, welcome to another video. My name is Scolarion and today I'll be putting out my first little bit of analysis on South Park Phone Destroyer. So today I want to be talking about 8 cards that I think are a little bit underused in today's meta. Of course there's a clear stance on what are the super good cards right now, but I do want to highlight some cards that I think maybe warrant a spot in the meta right now. Maybe as a little bit of a counter, or maybe just to explore some options that you just might not have thought about before. So with that in mind, let's kick it off with our first theme. I'll be going by themes. So for the adventure theme first, we'll be looking at Mr. Shaman Token. So Shaman Token is a 3 energy cost fighter. You can see his stats below the card. These stats are all based on unupgraded versions of the level. So for level 4, 5, 3, 2, 1, these are all the levels without extra upgrades added to them. I'll mostly be talking about level 5 for commons, 4 for rare, and 3 for epic, because that seems to be sort of the standard right now in Legendary and what most free-to-play or like semi-free-to-play players are at right now. But feel free to look at the stats if you're at a lower level for the card. It's always good to know those. So, Shaman Token, his charge effect removes all negative effects from allies. So why is this so good? If you look at the meta right now, there's a lot of effects going on. There's a really popular deck that plays a lot of poison, even multiple instances of poison, where they use Alien Clyde, they use Alien Queen Red, they just use the poison card. This card alone could shut down a lot of that deck. Also, there's a lot of mind control going on. There's even some freeze. These are not the most popular, but they do exist, and it's nice to have such a versatile card in your deck. But I think the main antagonist right now in the meta is actually Stan the Great. And the funny thing is that Stan the Great is also a 3-cost fighter, except he's in the fantasy team. So if you don't know Stan the Great has a charged ability where once he pulls it off, he debuffs your entire enemy team. And he just gives them all a bunch of minus attack. So Shaman Token could actually be a very good way to deal with that, because if your units are clashing and all of a sudden your units all get debuffed, that's pretty much a loss on your end, unless you got a spell. But those all warrant like extra energy to sort of clean up the mess that Stan the Great left behind. And I think Shaman Token is actually a great way to negate that energy loss. One of the things about Shaman Token is that he's kind of perceived as a card that is a little bit of a weaker fighter because of a strong effect. So I actually looked into this. I gotta go on my second screen for this, but as you can see, his attack at level 5 is 91. This is actually the same attack as Stan the Great at level 5. So that myth kind of goes away. And as for health, Stan the Great has 413 health at level 5. Shaman Token has 386. So you're kind of you're at a 27 health deficit compared to like one of the standard 3-cost meta fighters. I think for a minus 27 health comparison to like one of the strongest warriors in the game or fighters in the game, to have this guy potentially negate a swing in a fight, it's a thing you should really consider. I haven't experimented with him myself yet, because I simply do not have the upgrade mats to test him out, but if I did, I would definitely try this guy in all my decks, or at least in my semi-aggressive adventure decks. I think he would be a decent addition to that. So the next card I want to talk about is also out of the adventure theme. Her name is Captain Wendy. Oh yeah. So I'm a really big fan of this card. I know Some people really like her, but I think in general she's still a little bit under the radar in terms of popularity. I don't see her that much actually in the legendary ladder. I see her a little bit, but not that much. Personally, I run a really aggressive fantasy adventure list where I don't even run a tank. I just run pure aggression. And I think Captain Wendy fits really well in that. So the thing I've noticed with ranged cards in this game is that in general, the ranged cards are all really slow, like kind of methodical, just attackers or defenders even. You got the Timmies, they're all really slow. You've got Nathan, who is also really slow. Nathan is a little bit more aggressive, but it's mostly because of his range, not his speed. Captain Wendy, on the other hand, she walks pretty fast. Her range is decent. The triple shot is just an insane ability. If you level it up, it will deal with a lot of the leftover assassins or just under-leveled assassins in general. Also, one of the things I want to highlight in this is if you're looking for an aggressive ranged option, a lot of the ranged characters in this game, their animations of their charge abilities are actually quite slow. If you look at Catapult Timmy, for instance, it takes him a little bit to like put the rats in the basket, and you gotta launch him, and then, you know, it takes a while before the rats get there. Even Pirate Ship Timmy takes him a little bit to fire the cannonball. But Captain Wendy, it's just she puts the gun in the air, and just 3 shots come out and they burst down people. So if you're looking for more of an aggressive range card, I think Captain Wendy is just a great option for you. Next up, we're going over to the sci-fi theme. For the sci-fi theme, I also picked 2 cards that I think not necessarily deserve a spot in the meta right now, but I think they're certainly unexpected options, and they're good for a variety within the meta. And they also explore kind of ungrounded territory where people don't usually use them, but I think there's definitely strats for them that do work. So first off is Freeze Ray. I know these this upgrade table doesn't really do much for it because it just gives it a little bit more range. But in general, this card actually surprised me. So I think about 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 even, there was the Sci-fi event, and Freeze Ray was one of the cards that you could pick to get a point towards your end goal. So I figured, let's try it out. And actually, this card really surprised me. I see 2 uses for it. Well, actually 3. So the main use for it right now is to send in a Barrel Dougie, for instance, or maybe even a Starving Marvin. And once it reaches the tower, you just freeze everything, and you just pray for the best. You hope they don't put down an assassin, or they fireball it, or whatever. But still, you just do the combo, and then you see what works. I think this is a little bit too predictable to use it that way. Also, one of the things about Freeze Ray in that combo is that once you see it, you'll be prepared for it every time. Because once you know it's coming, you can just adequately prepare for it, and I mean, that's just it. One of the other ways I think you could use it is just straight up in a clash. It's not that expensive of a card. If you look at Fireball, Fireball is 5 cost. Of course, it does a lot of damage. It instantly wipes most of the things if you got it up to proper level. But Freeze Ray is a lot cheaper option. Of course, it doesn't do any damage, but you could see it as a little bit of an investment because your units get to do free damage in instance. Because they're still fighting, except theirs aren't fighting back anymore all of a sudden for 4 seconds. 4 seconds is a long time. Of course, this does get hit by Purify, but in that case, it's not the worst thing in the world. You're running Sci-fi, so you might still be running Poison as well in case you need to clean up, which they don't have Purify then for them. So overall, I think that could be a really good way to just take value out of this card. Because essentially, if you're clashing, you Freeze Ray, you can add up all the damage that your units do in that 4-second time period, and you can treat Freeze Ray as if deal that much damage to your opponent's minions, because that's essentially what you just did. You just gave free time for your units to deal damage that otherwise they wouldn't have. I guess in that way you could also see it as a heal, because you're not losing health. So overall I think that's a really really good use for it. Another use for it is if you don't see the need to use it, and one assassin, for instance, gets through to the enemy new kid with a little bit lower health. This is where I actually got a lot of free wins from. For instance, an assassin of mine got to the enemy new kid, and it was just about to die to zap. You just freeze ray, and then probably by the time they spawned a unit, they got 2 attacks in, and you took a health bar. And for the low amount of energy that it costs, I think that's super worth. So it's more of a catch you off guard card, but I think in general, a lot of people could explore freeze ray a little bit more. Also, it's a spell card, so it doesn't cost any materials to upgrade. Yeah, definitely an option for the sci-fi theme. So the next card is also a sci-fi card, and it is Marine Crag. I'm sorry that the stats are incomplete for this guy. I could not find the proper stats for him. I think the poison amount should be at 18. Don't quote me on that though. That is for level 5, of course. But apparently his poison was bugged for a little while. He kind of flew under my radar too at that point. I mean, he still flies under my radar, and I think he flies under most people's radar. The thing with Marine Crag though is a lot of people just instantly look at his effect, and they look at the board impact, because a lot of the impact you want to have is on the board, because most of the fighting and the trading, of course, it takes place on the board. But Marine Crag, I think there is an unexplored deck type, which is the chip deck. Of course, if you look at Clash Royale, there is a lot of decks that go with Miner and Poison, last time I played at least, which was kind of known as a chip deck, where you just play super defensive, and once you free up some energy with super cost-effective defenses, you just put down the Miner, you put down the Poison, and you chip away at their tower. So Marine Crag is of course ranged. He is 4 energy. That's a lot of energy for just a range card, of course, especially with his effect. But what people tend to forget is that this guy chips away pretty hard at your enemy new kid. And I think if you build a proper defensive deck with Marine Crag and maybe another card that I'm gonna hit up later in this video, I think he would be kind of nasty to deal with, because I mean, unless you run Purify, there's nothing you can do about this poke. I think it's just a really unexplored deck right now. I think I've seen some decks being played that kind of go towards this direction. I haven't seen them work fully yet. But yeah, it's definitely a deck that has to be explored. I might actually do it myself because I have a lot of sci-fi mats. I'm still waiting for the buff to epics and legendaries to see if I have to use my materials on like a must level epic by then. But if none of those epics within the sci-fi theme pop up, then I'll definitely try this Marine Crag strategy. So next we go on to the Mystic theme. For Mystic, actually, I had a really hard time finding a card that's really underrated or undervalued within this theme, because all their cards are just so damn good. Of course, there is Friar Jimius Poseidon Stan, who generally don't see that much play, but they do see enough play to where they're actually not, in my opinion, underrated. So I thought it would make a special mention towards this little guy. His name is Choirboy Butters. So Choirboy Butters is possibly like one of my favorite cards. Ever since I started the game, I got him in one of my first packs, and this guy deals so much damage. He's of course a 2 energy cost assassin for the Mystic theme. As you can see, his health is actually a fair bit lower than his attack, which is one of his specialties. Of course, he doesn't have a really impactful Death Wish because he just gives you a little bit of extra energy. But in general, this guy doesn't see a lot of play. I do get why though. Because Mystic has so many good cards that you have to level up, you're going to be short on mats. Of course, there's Zen Cartman, all the other cards I just listed for Mystic. They're all worth upgrading. On top of that, Choirboy Butters is an epic, which means he costs even more to upgrade. So I thought I would make a mention of this guy, because what helped me a lot when I just started out the game is I ran Choirboy Butters just as a 5 out of 5 upgraded level 1. And once I got 3 of them, I upgraded into level 2, and that's where I just quit. But for the early stages of your account, this guy is definitely a good addition to your deck. He's fine as a 2 cost. You might not have access to some of the more top-end assassins yet, like Princess Kenny. And Mystic is one of the earlier... it's the 3rd theme you unlock before Fantasy. So, taking all that into account, if you do run Mystic early on your account, you should definitely consider putting some materials into this guy and running him just early on as a kind of a boost to your account. So, next up we have the Fantasy theme. I think the Fantasy theme in general is quite known to be one of the best themes in general. I think Adventure might be a little bit above it, but Fantasy is definitely one of those themes where you think, damn, there's some power in there. So there's not a lot of underused cards in there. Most of you guys know both the Assassins, Princess Kenny, Paladin Butters, of course Stan the Great. But I think there's one card in there that is a little bit under the radar. It's a little bit niche as well. I don't think it's super great, but in case the meta speeds up, I think you should consider this guy. Dark Mage Craig. So, it might come as a surprise that I list this guy. There is a comparison I like to draw between this guy and Mr. Terrence Mephisto. So, Mephisto is widely used as a counter to rats, just a general good AoE. You can combo him with, for instance, the Kyle cards, both the Ninju and the Gunslinger. Dark Mage Craig, though, offers a somewhat same solution to rats, or just being able to deal heavy AoE damage. Except he does it for 1 less energy. The only downside to this is that, of course, Terrence Mephisto is a flying unit, Dark Mage Craig is on the ground. Also, one of the big downsides to Dark Mage Craig is his Warcry, which has a super long animation and in general doesn't really do that much on your counter push or on your just straight up on your attack. It's not that impactful. But that's why I said if the meta ever speeds up and you're really gonna have to fight for every little bit of energy that you got, Dark Mage Craig might be able to take up a spot over Terrence Mephisto. Although he's a rare, he's Mystic. He's Fantasy. A lot of good Fantasy cards that probably you will prioritize your mats for, but who knows? He might get to see some play someday. Yeah, definitely something to consider, but I wouldn't put it too high on your list. So, finally, we get to the very last, not really theme, it's the neutral theme. I'll just call it a theme for now. So, I think in the neutral theme, there's quite a few cards that people focus on, like Mephisto, like the rats, like some people use Dog Poo. I think he's like above average. But there's a few cards that I think deserve some attention. I know neutral is a very resource-starved theme because they don't have an episode in the PvE mode. But if you do find yourself to have a little bit of extra materials, I think you should consider these 2 cards. I'll start off with the first one. So first up is Nelly. And I have quite an opinion on this girl. I think she's just a great card. When I first started my account, I used this card in pretty much all of my decks. Her attack has a little bit of a knockback. Of course, it's an AoE attack. She spins around with her two paddles, I think. I'm not sure what they are. She just deals consistent AoE damage. Not the most tanky person, but it's still quite a decent health card. So the main reason I list Nelly right now is I use it in my deck right now as well. I think one of the most problematic cards in the game right now are the rats. Whereas every deck runs rats. So it's just, they're that good. Every deck runs rats. And as you find yourself climbing the ladder, if you play your rats and your opponent plays rats, if your rats are under leveled, they're never going to beat the opponent's rats. And that's a big problem because they die. Like, it's not even close. They will just all die. And he will have, like, leftover rats. That's why in my deck, I run both Mephisto and Nelly. I think they're, outside of killing rats, I think they're still decent cards. But it's, in my opinion, very important to have a rats counter in your hand at all times. Because the way in this game cycling works is not a true cycle to your deck. So you can get rats back in your hand straight away as they die. And I think that's a problem because if you play a rats counter, and it dies to the rats or any other units next to the rats, if they get rats back again, they will just destroy you. There's nothing you can do about it. They're just that strong. So yeah, that's why I picked Nelly as one of the neutral cards. Just straight up because of her anti-rats utility. I think it's great to just have two counters. Also, it's a 3 energy cost. It's not that expensive. It can be a dead card in your hand. For a lot of the match, you'll probably prioritize dropping other units over her. But she's just really nice in one of those oh shit situations where you do find rats coming at you and you just need an answer straight away. Also because it's a ground unit, it blocks the rats compared to Mephisto. Mephisto also, like if they pair rats with an assassin, Nelly will actually aggro everything and Mephisto will probably kill the rats, but the little assassin will probably still just take your health bar. So that's why my first neutral pick goes to Nelly. And my second neutral pick is Marcus. So I don't run this guy myself, but I'm very anxious to try it. Like, I want to try this guy. Downside though is he's neutral and he's an epic. So epics take a lot of materials to level up, as you all know. And we all know neutral materials are very scarce, and there's a lot of good units already to spend those materials on. But like I said before, with Marine Craig, I think there is room for a chip deck in this game. And of course, like the ultimate chip guy in this game is Marcus. His charge ability, he throws the pillow at the enemy nuke it. It deals a lot of damage. Actually, if you can look at the stats for Marcus, he's the only guy that I added the 40 out of 40 upgrades for after level 4. Because you can see his ability like scales up pretty quickly. He has a lot of intervals between levels. So the difference between a level 4 Marcus and a maxed out level 4 Marcus is actually quite noticeable. It's like 29 damage. So in a chip deck that adds up. If all you need is like 2 or 3 cycles of poke, that 29 damage will definitely come into play. So yeah, that's just straight up why I like Marcus. Of course, he's expensive, 4 cost, expensive to level up. But if we ever want to innovate this game, which I think right now it's a little bit stale. I think if you do want to try to innovate, I think this is one of the cards that you should look at and try out the chip deck. Which, if I ever find the match to do it, I will definitely try. But I'm still leveling up my rats, so it's not going to be for a little bit. I'm close though. I've almost got my rats at level 5, so that's he's definitely next on my list for neutral. So one quick thing I forgot to mention for Nelly. is actually, I looked up the stats on Nelly versus rats. I'll have to look at my other screen where I got my notes. So level 4 Nelly, 1 shots, max level 5 rats. Level 6 rats got 50 HP, and Nelly's got 49 attack at level 4. So Nelly at base level 4 without extra upgrades has got 49 attack. Level 6 rats got 50 HP. So a maxed out level 5 rat will still die to an unupgraded level 4 Nelly, which is quite a big deal because level 6 is just a little bit out of reach for most people right now, especially with rats. Everyone likes rats. Nobody really wants to donate their rats. A lot of the top clans, they don't really let everyone just go at rats and request them. They usually have lists for them. So if you can get Nelly up to level 4, that's a really big deal for dealing with generally higher level rats, or just a higher upgraded rats. So yeah guys, that concludes my list of 8 cards that I think you should consider in your deck or into the meta if you want to innovate, if you want to try something new, or just in general if you want to counter the meta. You make up your own mind. Please let me know in the comments if you think I forgot any card, if you disagree, if you agree. I'd like to hear all your opinions. I love debating this game with people because from discussion comes innovation, and that's what we all need. We need some innovation in this game. Although I like the meta as it is right now, it's very diverse, but you know, we always want to be that guy that invents the new meta. So if you like this video, please let me know. Leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more of this type of content. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace.